One of the things I've probably learned is it's okay not to have all the answers. We always feel that we need to know everything. And I was so not confident in the beginning of my business that I was so conscious that I didn't know everything because I was going in with no experience. I was like the rookie. It doesn't matter because you're all rookies. At the end of the day, you're starting up something new. So whether you're a Michelin star chef or not, it doesn't matter. As long as you're willing to give it a go and you have a vision and a direction, the rest will sort of gradually fall into place over time.
Welcome to Journeys Through Change, a podcast that inspires women to let go of the fear and say yes to possibility. I'm your host, Noelle Van, an author, creator, and empowerment coach who spent years in corporate America helping innovators and leaders ride the waves of change with ease and grace. I now work with women to step into change and unleash the power they have to create a life they love. Whether you're contemplating a change in your career, relationship, health, lifestyle, or anything in between, nothing's off the table. I'll be offering up simple insights to help you manage the ups and downs of change and sharing interviews with successful women who took a leap of faith to create the life they knew they were meant to live, sharing their wisdom, advice, and all the juicy lessons they learned along the way. So get cozy in your favorite comfy chair and let's get started. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to do whatever it took, even if it meant learning something completely new, to follow your dream? To step into the unknown with nothing more than the willingness to give it your all and a refusal to give up? 5 years ago, Naomi Rose quit her 9-to-5 job to follow her passion for baking by restoring a historic building in her small hometown of St. Neots, England, opening a cafe and bar named after her grandmother, Elsie May. With no professional baking experience or knowledge of the industry, she set out to learn everything she could to follow her dream. Sheer determination led her to draw upon her years of management in the nonprofit sector and quickly established herself as a force to be reckoned with in the competitive world of food and hospitality. Undeterred by the challenges of the pandemic, Naomi launched a successful crowdfunding campaign to extend her operations to include a micro bakery, which quickly gained a loyal following among foodies and baking enthusiasts. Within just 3 months of opening, her bakery won Britain's Best Loaf Awards. In response to the ongoing challenges of the economy and cost of sustaining a brick-and-mortar business, Naomi embarked on yet another venture, and by deciding to take her business online, Baking Boss was born. Naomi now shares her wealth of knowledge and expertise through online workshops and her podcast, Baking Boss Kitchen Secrets. Her influence has spread well beyond her local community as she's become a sought-after guide and mentor to countless aspiring bakers in pursuing entrepreneurship and achieving their dreams. Naomi, I am so very thrilled to have you here. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's so great to be here.
So Naomi, where do we start? I think the best place to go back to is, so you were working in the nonprofit sector, and it sounds like you had a pretty pivotal moment when you were taking the dog for the walk one morning. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Where we live in St. Neots is a riverside town, if you like. So we have a beautiful river, which is why we ended up living here, because we walk out of our house and within 5 minutes we're along the river with our dog in the morning. So we'd walk into our local town along the river, which would take about 25 minutes, and have a coffee outside one of the local coffee shops. And we'd overlook this building, which has been derelict for a long time now. And it was an old hotel, pub, that sort of thing. And we think, wouldn't it be amazing if that was turned into a hotel? And as we're walking back from our coffee one morning, we went past a different building and it was being renovated. It was had circus posters up in the window. It's just really run down and horrible and really grotty, and it'd been there similarly for years. And the lady renovating it said, "Do you want to come in and have a look?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, why not?" we're really nosy. And she showed us this picture which was on the wall, and it was from 1929, which I had no idea the building was one that old. And secondly, it had this amazing history because it was the local county's electrical company showrooms. So actually it had been where electricity had first come into the town back in the 1920s, and this building was used to showcase what electricity could do. And yet it had been buried in a former nightclub, it had been an amusing arcade, it'd been everything but what it had been. Underneath all of that, these original features like the parquet flooring and the bronze work in the windows, they're all still there, just blacked out and horrible. So this building needs to be brought back to life, and it would make this amazing cafe and bar. And that's sort of where it all began.
Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine those stumbling upon that, because when you see that kind of history, and especially I just love that old character of buildings when you see that kind of thing. But it sounds like you really could see the possibility there.
Absolutely, and had absolutely no idea. And actually what was interesting was that a lot of the people, our customers, didn't know about it because it had been a job centre for many, many years after the electrical company showrooms. But some of my older customers still remember going and buying their light bulbs and actually picking them out, and then they'll test it at the back. So someone had actually brought in an old meter reading that they had used to get stamps there. So all of this history started coming out that we'd never seen before.
I love that. I mean, you are working in, well, I wouldn't say corporate. Yes. Is it corporate America? Is nonprofit considered corporate? I don't know. I guess you were working in the nonprofit sector.
Yeah.
And then you're thinking to yourself, wow, this would be a cool thing to do. But were you thinking about baking?
The year before, I'd run London Marathon, and it was like a challenge I'd set for myself in my head that one day I would do this marathon, because it just seemed so out of reach, because I didn't like running. I never liked running. And when I decided to sign up and do it, I'd run all of about 5 kilometres, and it's 26 miles, so that was 3. So I had a long way to go. But I needed to prove to myself that I could challenge myself, and it wasn't that my job was awful. It wasn't that at all, because actually it was quite rewarding. I was heading up a great team, and I was just bored. It wasn't challenging me in a way that was satisfying me. I'd often be trying to figure out what I was going to do, and it just thought, I just can't do this every day, day in, day out. That's why I ended up doing the marathon. And I actually realised by the end of the marathon, because it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, and I completely underestimated how much it would take over, injuries, food, everything. But when I got to the end of it, I just thought, if I can set my brain to doing something that I thought was impossible, what else can I do? And throughout the entire journey of doing the marathon and throughout work, I used to bake as a way of calming myself down. So I worked in digital social media PR comms, so I did lots of launches, lots of quite high profile stuff. And they would be very stressful. Some days, you'd have quite high powered things that you'd have to do. And in my kind of half-hour breaks when I was online trying to do a tweet or respond to thousands of tweets coming in, I would go and bake in the kitchen to calm myself down. And I've done it. I've always done it. It seemed like quite a natural progression, even though I thought, well, I'm not professional. I'm a home baker, but I also know enough about areas of business that actually those two combined, and finding a good team of staff, I could probably do this. And that's how it kind of evolved, really.
And you had mentioned before, I think that you said your father was pretty supportive in helping family. Yes. Obviously, family support, I think, helps a ton, right? When you're kind of going to jump into something.
Yes, yeah. And my dad had been retired for, I think, 10, 15 years, and he's kind of wanted another challenge. He went to the golf course every day, and it was all very nice. He's a very bright person. He's a clever man. He's got a huge amount of skill, and he used to love doing business. It was one of his things he really enjoyed. So I think it was a really great skill set as an advisor to bring into the business, but he also loved being around customers. He was very much the socialite. Whenever growing up, we had a lot of parties, and I have a huge family, and he was the ultimate host. So it was kind of really worked really well.
You make this decision. How did you even get started?
We decided when we spoke to the person renovating, we got in touch with the landlord and just had a conversation basically. And he was, to be honest, he was one of the best landlords I could ever ask for, considering what was then going to come in the next few years after that. He was quite particular about who would actually rent this building. And we were very much keen on helping to restore and take care of it. And that's what he liked about us. And he liked the business venture because he's kind of one of these people that's quite entrepreneurial himself. He has a lot of properties, he has a lot of businesses. So he understood the world and wanted to be supportive of something he could see really working. So he ended up choosing us, and it went from sort of there. There was a huge list of things that needed to get in place to get the building from basically an empty shell. Well, it was kind of an empty shell. It needed to be taken back to the empty shell and then rebuilt again into a cafe, because it wasn't that. So building control, planning permissions, licensing, huge amount of legal stuff, environmental health, and there was a lot of stages that had to be go through. But I'd been a project manager in my part of my corporate non-profit roles. I'd been project managing lots of stuff. I was used to project managing. So we had a huge document and we worked out how we were going to do it. And every task we got to, there was something else that I'd missed because we were flying blind. So we just took it step by step and it evolved from there, really.
So, I mean, you think of the logistics of putting this in place, which is a big mountain of things, but then the baking and when I think about going from baking at home and doing it for pleasure to then having customers, having a menu, how did that whole evolution happen in terms of getting prepared and ready to be, a cafe owner and a baker and a professional baker?
It definitely took a while. I mean, in a way, the baking took a little bit of a backseat while everything else happened. I'd already found some people that would be joining the team, and three of them had worked together before and I knew them, and they worked in kitchens. So they came with their own knowledge as well. So it was very much, okay, let's start this together. Let's work together on this because I'm going to be honest, I'm leading this, but I've not worked in a kitchen, whereas you have. So I'm not going to start telling you this is how you should do things because you've got more experience than me in this area. So let's work out what's going to be right for the business and work out what equipment we need, what we're going to need on a daily basis. Commercial equipment versus home equipment goes up in price massively, but we kind of went, well, do we really need all of this big equipment? Because we're not going to be a massive outfit of people traipsing through our door day in, day out constantly. We're not a high-end restaurant or anything like that. But actually, let's start simple and then we can work out what's going to work correctly for us from there. And then we can grow it. So let's get the basics in, start small, and then work out what works and what doesn't. And it was quite quickly within the first month because we started renting the building technically in the October, but we started a bit of work sooner than that. And my deadline was I want to be open by Christmas because if we open at Christmas, it will be a good takings month. And let's assume that January is going to be quiet because we sell cakes and most people go on diets in January. So let's really push it to December. So that's what we did. So we opened in the busiest month of the year. It was manic, but massive learning curve. And certainly by the end of that first month, we had a much clearer idea of what we would need in the kitchen, the practicalities. Within the first 4 months, we'd rearranged the kitchen. It just didn't work. We'd got the sink in the wrong place. The front of house staff would come through and get in the way of the kitchen staff, and it wasn't a big space. So we learned from just trying it. So it was definitely trial and error. And it was like that all the way through the business. We just accepted that we don't have all the answers. We don't know everything, but we're going to try it, get feedback, refine it. And that's what we did. Our menu, when we first opened, was completely different by the time we closed because we learnt from what people were asking for and what they wanted. And things like I didn't even realise how many vegan and food without gluten we would need. I thought it would be small. It's so much bigger than I imagined, and it grew constantly. So we had to learn how to bake gluten-free and vegan and make sure we've got all of these cakes down because none of us were gluten-free or vegan. So we had to work out how to do it. So it was definitely every day had a new challenge. We worked together to work out how we were going to get to the right solution. And sometimes we'd kind of go, well, we can't do that because we can't please everybody, and if someone's not happy with that, there are other places around the town and we're supportive of each other, so we'd send them to someone else. That's how I was always really afraid of how all the other coffee shops would think another one coming into town, but it wasn't like that at all because we all had a slightly different offering and we were stronger in numbers. We were stronger together. So that's how we always viewed it.
I have to say, Naomi, when you and I had our first conversation, I went online and I looked because the way you were describing it, you have sort of your visual of what you think of when somebody's describing a place. I have to tell you, first of all, so incredibly impressed by not only the space you created, because it looked like such an inviting and cozy and really wonderful space, And the historic building is amazing, right? I mean,
It's incredible.
You just have this, there's an aesthetic to
Stunning.
it that's just really, it blew me away. But the other thing that I thought of was like, even just the food, you had all of these pictures of the food, and I was like, this is like a really good, cozy place to go to, right? And I love that, you welcome dogs in there. And I mean, it just was like, I was really blown away by it.
Oh, thank you.
When you first opened the doors, that's pretty amazing. The first day of opening, how did that feel?
Oh, it was quite bizarre, actually, because we all agreed we were going to stand on the front doorstep and do the picture that they did in 1929. So on opening day in 1929, they stood outside and had a picture taken, which we could do to a certain extent. But the difference was, back then they didn't have a lamppost right outside the front because they didn't have electricity. And we did, so we had to slightly adjust it. So we all stood outside and did the photo of opening day 2018, like 1929, because there wasn't a queue or anything. And we're like, oh, I wonder if anyone would come, because you don't actually really know when you're so new. And then they all came in. So I've worked in digital for a long time, so I was very tech savvy. My team, on the other hand, were used to not working with tech at all, so they were used to using pens and paper. So I was like, we need to streamline that, we can't do that. So we were also learning new technology as we went, and they were learning new systems. So it's a completely new skill to learn, and you've got people staring at you trying to order. Again. Right. So it definitely took a while, and actually I remember the very first customer, because we still see him round the town now, and it was, we took a picture, and dog friendly was definitely, we were all dog owners, my team, myself obviously, and one of the things at the time, none of the places apart from one chain coffee shop would allow dogs in my town, and I'm like, yes, missing a trick, because this river is a perfect place to walk your dog, as long as you've got the right processes and rules in place to make sure you manage dogs being in your building. There's no reason why you can't. So that's why we wanted to be dog friendly, and often actually we would know the dogs' names before the owners. So we know all the dogs' names, and they would get spoiled rotten, so they'll get hundreds of treats. But of course we loved it, and the customers loved that. So very few people got a bit cross that we had dogs in there.
I just think of the way that you describe all of this. You definitely strike me as someone who takes on a challenge pretty head on, right? And you have this sense about you, the way that you describe it, it's like you are a project manager at heart, it feels like, right? Yes. You kind of know, okay, this is how we organize around this. These are the kinds of things we need to think about. Let's just jump in. The things we don't know. It's okay. Having that sort of leadership quality, I think probably helped you and your team a lot, just because you weren't looking to be perfect. You were like, let's just try it. And if we have to move the kitchen around, we move the kitchen around. It's just another step, right?
Absolutely. I think the only way you can approach anything like that, if you want to reach like the key goals, is to treat it like a project and have clear, I had all sorts of things. I had like a traffic light system, and I'd have like risks on, can we open without this? Where the contingency, is this an absolute must, we need it, or is it a nice to have? And we prioritised and worked out what was important to make sure that we could open our doors, rather than, for instance, when we first opened, the walls were white because we did not have time. I really wanted it beautifully painted how it was when you looked in the photos, which was it was called a trailblazer blue. It was beautiful colour, but we were like, right, let's just get white on the walls. That will do. Let's get the doors open, because now I need to make some money, because we've just spent an awful lot getting it open. The non-essential stuff got moved out of the way, and all of the essential stuff got prioritised, and that's how we worked. And then it just evolved. My husband, he helped build an outdoor area. So we had a back space, which was effectively the bin store, and it wasn't the nicest of areas, but it's where we kept all our rubbish bins and everything. We decked it, and we put an outdoor seating out there. So it was lovely, and we called it the secret garden because you couldn't see it from the road. It was a beautiful space in the summer, and we had all the fairy lights on top, so in the evening at the bar you could sit outside. It was beautiful, and thankfully we had it during COVID as well, so when people weren't keen on sitting inside for periods of time, they had a beautiful space to sit outside.
I don't want to miss this, because I know that you named it after your grandmother. Was there something about her that inspired this?
Elsie May, my grandmother, she was quite an incredible lady, but she always wanted her own tea room. And I spent a lot of time baking with her. She lived until 95. She had such a positive attitude. She was always, nothing really got her down. She looked on the good side of life. And she even looked after the elderly until she was 87, but she lost her sight. So she couldn't look after them anymore. I'm like, well, you're older than most of them. But she still kept baking. She had scales called Jeeves, and, we just made sure she had all of the right ingredients and everything like that, because that was always the thing, that she couldn't read the labels. But it was kind of that attitude that I thought, this is the reason why I need to name this business after her, because even though we baked together, but actually it was that positive attitude, that spirit, that was actually really what I really wanted the cafe and bar, those brand values, those core beliefs of friendliness, just being able to relax and enjoy yourself, enjoy good food. Doesn't necessarily need to be pretty Michelin star style, but if it tastes good and it is good and the staff are friendly, then that's my kind of place. So
Oh my gosh. Well, and she sounds like she was pretty tenacious too. So I'm sure you get a little bit of that from her, right?
Oh, absolutely.
She definitely was willful. You mentioned the pandemic. We have to go there because that was, I think, probably a pivotal moment for you guys as well. So how did you handle the pandemic?
I knew something was going to come. One of my family works in part of the government, and he'd phoned and said, you need to prepare for this because this is going to be much worse than you think. So I knew something major was coming. And here in the UK, it was the run-up to COVID, and obviously we'd been hearing all of the stuff on the news in January and February, like the rest of the world. And we went into lockdown on the 20th of March. But that 2 weeks prior, we had no announcements from the government. We didn't know what was going on. But of course, everybody started getting really scared. So no one was coming out. They were terrified of knowing what to do. So literally my sales, just like many businesses around the town, just completely dived. I'm like, I don't know what to do because the government aren't saying anything. I've got salaries to pay, but no customers. So I was actually starting to make my staff redundant because they pushed me into that corner that I'm like, I can't pay you at the end of the month now because our income's just literally stopped. And then the government finally announced that you're going to have to close and we're going to sort stuff out. But it took them a long while to get that announcement out. And it was literally pretty much, you close tonight. I remember I'd actually finished on a Friday night and the bar was due to open. And I'd been in the gym straight after work, and I walked out the gym and hundreds of messages from my staff had come up on my phone. And I literally, I think 5 minutes before the bar was due to open, I just said, nope, that's it, it's done. We're shut. And it was literally that amount of notice that we had. We came in, and of course we weren't sure what we were allowed to do, what we weren't allowed to do, but basically on that Saturday, we'd shut down the business. And the Saturday, myself and the team came in to basically clear everything out because we got a full weekend of supplies in. So we then had to clear everything out. We were giving away fresh food to families, NHS workers, so the National Health Service over here that were really struggling. So actually just really giving away what we could not use and to the community that actually really needed it at the time. We talked about doing takeaway, but one, I didn't want to put my staff at risk. And secondly, we really struggled to get supplies. Flour became non-existent, packaging became non-existent because everybody panic bought. I mean, there was obviously a global toilet roll crisis, but I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to take a step back from this. It's been quite a roller coaster. The first 15 months was quite a roller coaster anyway, but now we're in this kind of, are we able to carry on or not? I can't pay my rent at the moment. What happens from here, basically? So I said, look, everyone sit down, stay safe for now, and we will come back when we know more. And it was like that for about 2 to 3 months before we could even consider reopening. And then, of course, we're into the ridiculous rules, non-rules, all of the varying different things. Yeah, which, again, the team were brilliant. But we used it to re-strategize a bit. So we said, well, you know what? We don't get an opportunity to stop in business very often. Usually when you start a business, it's full head on, full steam ahead, and you don't get much time off. So here we are, we've got time off. So what are we doing really well, what we're doing not so well, and what stuff are we going to stop, and how are we going to change it. And that's what we did. We re-strategized, I restructured the team slightly, and we came in kind of much stronger. And of course, it made us better because we had to adapt so much because of all of the changes, all of the different rules. And then again, we had to close again. So the bar was pretty much shut for quite a good portion of the time because there were all kinds of odd rules. Like you can't go out for a drink unless you're eating food. And we weren't serving food in the evenings. So we had all of these silly kind of rules that the government felt necessary, and we had to abide by them. So people were nervous of coming out. You can, maybe a coffee, you can get a takeaway, cocktails, drinking in the evening. People just weren't keen, and it was the same across the whole town because people just didn't want to be in an environment where they're in close proximity with anyone. So that just caused extra challenges. But during the sort of second part of the lockdown, we did do takeaway, which worked really well. So actually I was like, does anyone want takeaway afternoon teas? By the second lockdown, people were actually wanting to gift stuff because people have been through some really tough times. Obviously, COVID was so hard for everybody. Valentine's Day, we were just absolutely frantic. We had boxes of afternoon teas going out the door, so people actually had something nice to celebrate. Mother's Day was the same, lots of gifting. And that's when, during this time, I got back into bread making because I'd loved making bread. It was something I'd always loved, but trying to build a cafe and bar and do all the cakes and everything, I had to put it to one side, and I had a local supplier who was great at the start, but they just struggled with staff. They were having all kinds of issues, and our bread wouldn't arrive until lunchtime. Like, this isn't good enough. This doesn't work for us as a business. We serve breakfast. Most people have bread with their breakfast, so we need it. Right. So I thought, well, actually, I know how much we go through in any one given day, so I could probably do small batch loaves, small batch of bread every day for the cafe, and we'll have it our own, and it's in our control. So if we run out, we run out, but it's freshly baked. So we just started doing it for the cafe, and customers would say, where do you get your bread? And we're like, well, we make it. Oh, can I get a loaf? So we'd do the odd loaf here and there, but we had a tiny oven. So we had like an oven that was a range, like a home oven, because that's what we were comfortable with using. So like, well, we can't do any more because we've got a very small oven, and we still have to bake cakes and everything else in it. So that's where the idea from the bakery came from. And when I was sort of looking at the strategizing with my team, I was like, wouldn't it be amazing if we actually turn one of the outbuildings into a bakery and have much more space for a baking kitchen, and we'd have the downstairs kitchen as a service kitchen. And that's where the idea started formulating.
I imagine it as like an annex to where you were. Yeah. Was it next door?
Yeah,
was
exactly.
It right? Okay.
Yeah. I kind of started looking and planning about how we could do this, what it would cost, kind of really getting an idea of how we would do it. And building a bakery is far easier than building a cafe. You don't need huge amounts of equipment to do it. But I'm like, well, I know we're not cash rich at the moment because we're surviving a pandemic, so we're breaking even, so we're keeping everything afloat. So I'll go to the bank. They're offering resilience loans, so we can put a little bit in, but we need them to meet us in the middle. And they went, no, not a chance. You're not making profit. I'm like, well, what's the point of a resilience loan if it's for people making profit? That doesn't help. They were giving out various different loans with not much commitment, so we'd taken out a small loan because we didn't want to set ourselves up with all of this COVID stuff. Really, we didn't want to go beyond our means. And someone said to me, well, why don't you do crowdfunding? I'm like, why? I've worked in non-profit. Why on earth did I not think of that? Actually, it's a brilliant idea because I will find out whether it's something that people actually want. I then get people excited about it and the community involved in something that's really positive for the town. And if it doesn't work, no one's lost anything. It's not cost me anything. It's not cost them anything, because once you start a crowdfunding campaign and it doesn't reach its target, nothing happens with it. So I put a launch plan together because I had to treat it like a proper marketing campaign. It needed PR, it needed social media, it needed as much coverage as I could possibly get. And we had a month. So they have very short, usually on a lot of crowdfunding. Some go on for a long time, but a lot of the most successful ones, because 75% of them fail, but the most successful ones are done in 30 days. So it's a really short period of time, and I'm wanting £15,000 UK pounds, and we were going to invest the other half. We started the campaign and it just skyrocketed. It was incredible, the amount of support, and our local mayor backed us. We were quite good friends with him at the time. He really wanted this bakery as well. He was really behind it, and it made such a big difference because he really saw the potential of how this could work for the town. And by the end of the campaign, we'd actually raised 17,000, and 300 people had backed us. People we'd had quite, anonymous donations from people that had given us quite big amounts of money, and I have no idea who they were, but really wanted to support it. And of course, part of, for people that don't know what crowdfunding is, they're investing. So it's not a donation, it's not like a charity, but they're actually investing in something. So I'd got lots of different rewards. So a lot of them were around bread and coffee subscriptions or scone subscriptions, so that people would come in once a week to collect their coffee and their loaf for however long they wanted to. And then often they'll buy something else, because it was, you're standing there waiting to collect the bread that you've ordered. And we knew then how much we were having to make. So that really helped, because we had an idea of what needed to go on the shelves. While they're waiting, they're smelling everything going on behind them. They're like, just take a piece of that as well, please. So it worked brilliantly. And one of the tricky things with my town is, I call it in the centre of everywhere and the middle of nowhere, because it's so central for so many big towns. So all of London is about 35 minutes on the train. Milton Keynes is another big major city. Cambridge is a big major city, and they're all within that drive time. But it's also not in any of these major towns. So finding a baker was then my next challenge, because they go to the big cities rather than small towns. And I happened to find a baker. It was like everything, just all the stars aligned. So together we started to work on sourdough. So neither of us were sourdough bakers at this point, and I had not had very much success with sourdough. So we had to learn how to make sourdough. And I've been building the starters and everything, and we were just, the normal breads that I've been making, we readjusted them, we changed them, because obviously we're bulking up how much we were making at this point. And we got all the equipment in and everything like that, so we're trying new stuff. But the sourdough, we were having so many problems with it. It was coming out flat. It just wasn't working. We had production sheets, so every day we would write down exactly how we'd done the process. And we were getting so frustrated with it. And we got to Christmas of 2021, and I went, go have Christmas off, because I shut down to let my team have time with their families over Christmas. I'll have a work on it over Christmas. We'll come back in the new year refreshed, and we'll come back in with fresh eyes. And it was this, I was like, I have got to pretend I'm a scientist now, because I'm getting too emotionally attached to this bread and it's upsetting me. And I need to treat this like an experiment. I worked on it over Christmas. What changed it for us was 25 grams of water. That was all it needed in the end. It was a very small adjustment that it needed to make it work. And suddenly they started working. I was like, right, now we just got to get them bulked up from my home kitchen to the deck ovens. That's what we did. So within 3 weeks of coming back in January, we got the sourdough working. So that's like, right, we can now open. We've got sourdough. We can go for it.
Oh, my God. I think after this all happened, was there some sort of a contest that you entered for your loaves?
So we've been open not very long, and I managed to find another baker as well. So the team was growing, so we'd got 2 or 3 bakers in at this point. And I was emailed, like you do newsletters, saying Britain's Best Loaf Awards. I'm like, well, that could be quite good fun. It's an outing at the sort of great big exhibition centre about an hour from us. It's a food event. All the artisan bakeries from across the UK will be there. We might as well enter. At least we could get feedback on what we're doing and then find out how we can adjust it, because people seem to love our bread. We'd had not really hardly any complaints that were sort of worth noting, if you like. The majority of people absolutely loved it. And I'm like, well, actually, let's see how we stand up against nationals, because I think we've got a pretty good product. My team have worked hard. So I entered them, and they didn't know I'd entered them. And I sat on it for about 2 weeks before I told them, because I thought they're going to freak out what I've just done, because they weren't the kind of people that were used to doing this kind of thing. I was always the one that went in front of the press and the media and on the cameras and did the radio. They ran a mile from it. So me entering an award was quite quite monumental. So when I told them what I did, I think my head baker just went home. He didn't even speak to me, just went home after his night shift and just looked at me like, what have you done? I said, look, it's on our day off. Let's just go down, have a nice time. It's a food event. We'll meet some other bakers, have a bit of a network, chat, and we'll find out a little bit about how our loaves fare with everybody else. That's what we did. And they eventually came round to the idea of having a fun day out. And with sourdough, you have to start 2 or 3 days ahead. So we'd already started doing the sourdough, and then my head baker got up and did the other loaves the next morning before we went up. So we got our box of bread and we went up, and it's a proper full-on judging. You know, they're all in, there's about 9-10 people all in lab coats, and they really pull about your loaves. They cut it, they smell it. I mean, it's quite intense. We stood and watched them, and you can't hear anything they're saying because you're fenced away from all of the loaves of bread, and there were hundreds of loaves.
Oh my God.
And we were like watching them judge our bread, and I think we got about an hour in and we're like, we're going to have to walk away and come back later because it's just too intense. But obviously the sourdough category was the biggest category you could ever imagine. Everybody had been baking sourdough because it became trendy during lockdown. I think there must have been probably 70, 80 entries into sourdough, and we'd entered into 5 different ones. So we kind of got a white loaf, a granary, some with basically what they call inclusions. So this was like added ingredients to a normal loaf. And then we had also entered our sourdough as well. They came back later on in the day to do the awards, and we thought, well, we'll go and see how we've done. And then we won.
Oh, I love it.
So we won 4. And my head baker just turned to me and went, you've got to be joking. In a way, it was like how hard everybody had worked, and it just showed their skill, because I truly believe they had a really great product.
Yeah.
And our sourdough came in about 3rd in the end, which was a great achievement considering how much we battled with it.
Yes.
What just pipped us to the post was a slight dusting of flour on the top. We just put too much on, and that was it.
Wow.
And they were like, you should come and do the world. I was like, there's world bread competition?
Oh,
I think we're going to just bask in our glory of the best loaf of Britain at the moment.
I love that, though. Think of the amount of time that it took for you to get to that place, especially with the sourdough, and then to come back winner of, I mean, that's amazing. You're several months into the new annex, correct?
Yeah.
So what sort of took a turn there?
It was kind of around the end of April that I think it was the end of April that we'd gone to the awards. And at that point, there was various other different things going on with the world. Obviously, we were coming slowly out of the pandemic. People were starting to sort of come out at that point. But then, obviously, the war with Russia and the Ukraine started to also take effect. And in the UK, we had a cost of living crisis where energy prices just went through the roof because of everything else going on in the world. And people were still coming in, but they weren't spending anywhere near as much. And then suppliers were having issues getting product. So our flour delivery, even though we're a micro bakery, but we still needed 25 kilo of flour for just one day. It went from 3 working days to 14 working days overnight, and increased by 30% in price. And everything did that. So we'll be getting deliveries not knowing what we'll be getting. We didn't know when we were getting next deliveries. I think I spent God knows how many nights going around local supermarkets in my car at 11 o'clock at night trying to find flour for when my bakers could start. It had become ridiculous. And during the pandemic, everything had changed. There was some predictability before the pandemic. I could work out what days were going to be busy, what weren't. The pandemic wiped the slate clean. There was no rhyme or reason as to how everything was going to work. And of course, people had changed their attitudes about what they wanted in life. And that had, my core staff were brilliant. I could not have asked for better core staff that had been there from the beginning. But a lot of new staff were starting to come in, and then there was starting to be staff shortages everywhere. So bakeries really got hit by staff shortages. I don't know where all the bakers went, but the big cities got desperate. So they started offering staff that I trained from zero, £10,000 more a year
Wow.
for a baker that's got 5-6 months experience, and they were looking for 3 or 4 years experience. I'm like, I can't compete with that. I just can't meet that bottom line. And with all the costs going up and people just not coming in, I had to shut the bar because people weren't going out at night in my town. They stopped going out, and it was subsequent all over. Everybody was seeing the same pattern. So I had to let my bar staff go. And of course, the bar was the thing that made the money, really. And when I kind of decided that that was it, it's going to have to close, I thought, well, I have learned so much over this time. And I know there's a lot of people that I was trying to get into business, and their zone of genius is baking things. But actually, I've done all of the practical stuff of setting up a business and doing all the other bits that people don't know. And I didn't have anyone. I couldn't find anyone because consultants I work with only wanted to work with big food products or big restaurants. And I'm just a small little business in a town. And I want to use everything I've learned to help other people be able to actually really succeed in their business and guide them, as well as teach everything I've learned. So I love baking and I love business. So that's why I kind of thought, right, I've got to move it, take it with me wherever I go.
And the online business, so it's Baking Boss, which I love. So this has been in operation now since when? When did you start it?
So February, so the day after I put the business into liquidation, so the day after I put the café into liquidation, I was like, I can't sit and mope about this forever. I need to get on and decide what I wanted to do. And I thought, I could take on the name, but they wanted to, the insolvency company wanted me to pay to get my grandmother's name back, because obviously it was, I'm like, you know what, she'll still be remembered and honoured, but this is now a new chapter. So let's start afresh. Let's come back with a new mindset. And actually my online audience will probably be different from, even though I have lots of supporters that still used to come to the cafe.
Right.
My online audience is going to grow and evolve. My history, but it doesn't need to be my next business's history. So that's where I kind of thought, let's go with Baking Boss. It's kind of a bit of a play on words. You know, you can boss your bakes and you can be the baking boss. So,
well, and I think that that's a little bit telling of your grandmother as well. I mean, wasn't she a bit of a baking boss?
She was. She definitely was. And she had everything full fat, and she weighed about 6 stone. I'm like, how?
She probably has been looking down on you and saying, go girl, like you are doing a great job. The thing that I love, though, is that the pivots that you've made, it's like there's the outside world and how the world has sort of had to shape and mold what you're doing and how you're doing it. But then there's also that internal piece, right? Of like, how do you get yourself into a place where you can flex to what's going on, and you're in the emotional side of it, but you also kind of pull yourself out of that because you know that action needs to happen, which I think is just, it's brilliant, because I think most, especially entrepreneurs, myself included, we get into places where you could either go down that emotional path and think a lot about something and just go into that sinkhole of, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened, or whatever it is. Or you can say, okay, I'm going to take the emotion out of it and I'm going to keep moving forward. And that's kind of what I feel like your story tells us a lot about, how to not only figure it out, because you've had to, I mean, right down to baking sourdough, you like the fact that you had the wherewithal to go back and go back and go back until it happened. You're a tenacious person, right? You will do what you need to until you get it done.
I definitely say there were moments I was in that sinkhole going, certainly as I could see the writing was on the wall for the cafe and bar and the bakery, and it was out of my control. And I was so frustrated that I could not beat what was going on in the world, and actually quite arrogant to think that I could beat it in some ways, because it was an impossible task. And it was just, you know, most of my decisions by that point, because I was so exhausted and tired, were mostly emotional. And eventually I had to sort of plug my head back in and kind of go, you need to have a word with yourself and get a grip and think like a business owner, not like someone who's, you know, I had to not someone who's emotionally attached to this, which of course I was. It was completely everything to do with it, had an emotional connection. I've now got a chance to start afresh and, you know, maybe rethink how I want to run this business going forward. So I've learned a huge amount in this last 5 years or so. So now what am I going to take forward into this new business that's going to make it better?
So you're doing workshops and you have a podcast, correct?
Yes. I'm in the middle of moving house. So as soon as I've moved house and I've kind of got a bit more of a structure, so I'll be doing more workshops, online courses. There might be a book coming soon. And
Nice.
I do the podcast. So I'm working currently one-to-one with people. So that's sort of one of the things I'm doing, because I love working one-to-one with people. It's just really good to kind of get to understand their business goals and help them kind of get from one place to another. But I think probably what's going to be more beneficial is sort of doing online courses that people then can go away and download. So it's kind of getting to know what people really need, because what I needed might be quite different from what other people need. So finding out what people need the most help with, so I can be most useful to them and teach them what they need to do, both in baking and in business. I recognise that my skill set is quite unique, and I don't realise how much I've learned sometimes. So going back to sort of opening up and starting seems like a lifetime ago for me, and it's finding out what people really need and where people are. And there's a lot of people that are really struggling to get by. They've been surviving, and again, having someone that they can just maybe just talk to, have a listening ear, or someone that can look at it from the outside in.
I love that you're offering online options to people, because I think, especially post-pandemic, I feel like there's more online learning happening, and there's people that have a lot more of an entrepreneurial spirit that are kind of rising to the surface and saying, these are the kinds of things that I want to do, and this is how I want to pivot in my life. So like to have somebody like you who's been through the trenches, basically, in learning it from the ground up, I think is just amazing. We're going to have all of Naomi's links to where you can find her on the show notes too. But Naomi, I just want to thank you so much for joining us, because like I've said, I feel like you are a personification of strength and courage and just figuring out what you need to figure out in the moment, which is a real lesson to all of us in terms of just how do you take something that looks like an unsurmountable challenge and go for it? I mean, that's kind of how what I take away from it. Exactly. It's going for it and just see what happens and treat it like a project, which has really it's just really amazing to hear your story. And I thank you for being so open about the ups and downs of it. And it feels like you're kind of in the midst still. So we're going to have to check back in.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great. But yeah, I'm very much still in the early stages of this business. And again, I didn't quite maybe appreciate how much work went into starting up a business. So I have newfound respect for everybody else starting up another business. So again, being able to help people is what I really want to do. And that's why I had the cafes, because I love working with people, and it was there to be almost a bit of a sanctuary if you needed to escape from something and get away for a bit. And that's what I love about cafe culture. It's about going, experiencing new things. It might be that you're just having a tough day and just really need to get out. And that's why we wanted the kind of that to feel like a bit of a community where you can sit on your own and not feel that you're on your own there.
You were very successful in creating that kind of space, at least from what I could see. So you can just create that same thing online, right? I mean, I feel like
Absolutely.
You have the ability to draw people in a way, and now it just is going to translate a little bit differently.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things I've probably learned is it's okay not to have all the answers. We always feel that we need to know everything. And I was so not confident at the beginning of my business that I was so conscious that I didn't know everything, because I was going in with no experience. I was like the rookie. It doesn't matter, because you're all rookies. At the end of the day, you're starting up something new. So whether you're a Michelin star chef or not, it doesn't matter. As long as you're willing to give it a go and you have a vision and a direction, the rest will sort of gradually fall into place over time.
Oh, I love that. Naomi, we're going to leave it at that, because I think that's such a good message. And it's so true. Nothing needs to be perfect. You just need to start, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Messy action is good action.
Thank you again for being with us. We really appreciate you and your story.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been great.
That's it for now. Until next time. Thanks for listening to the Journeys Through Change podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or really wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us and leave a review if you've enjoyed this episode. And share it with a friend or on social media to spread the good word, so more women like you can find us and join in on the fun. For more information on the podcast or Day by Day book, go to livedaybyday.com.